Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madera Street. Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women. Wardrobe provided by Bahari Bahamas. Visit shopbahari.com. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm. As always, it's a pleasure to be in your company. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. So I'm calling the show today Profits and Losses, the Plight of Grand Bahama. And we all know that Grand Bahama has really been going through a difficult time. Even before COVID, even before Dorian, it seems like Grand Bahama just couldn't catch a break. I mean, it was hit by multiple successive hurricanes, and just, what was once a very vibrant economy is now just hanging on by a thread. And, when we try to figure out what went wrong, a central part of what we see happening in Grand Bahama right now has to do with the relationship between Hutchison Whampoa, the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and the government of the Bahamas. And it's a very complicated relationship, I must say. It's really weird. What that dynamic that is taking place there. And depending on who you talk to, different people will have different opinions as to why Grand Bahama has been allowed to deteriorate to the point that it has. Is the government to blame? Is the Port Authority to blame? What role does Hutchison Whampoa play in all of this? Depends on who you talk to, which opinion you're going to be given. And so the person that I have invited to be on the show today obviously comes with his view as to what is going wrong in Grand Bahama, what has gone wrong in Grand Bahama. And clearly he's coming with his viewpoint based on his history of what has taken place there. But I thought that, there was an article that appeared in the Tribune very recently with his views about the taxpayer, as he put it, being saddled with Hutchison Whampoa, Hutchison Port losses. And he is of the opinion that the government should have done a better job of negotiating. And so the person who I've invited to be on the show today is none other than Carey Leonard. Carey is the former Grand Bahama Port Authority in-house counsel. And, after reading this article, I thought I have to reach out to this man because I'd love to have him on the show to talk about his views as to why Grand Bahama is where it's at today. Mr. Leonard, welcome to the show. I don't hear him. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening, but I can't hear him. and it would be difficult to do an interview if I can't hear what he's saying. So, keep speaking for me. We were working on a technical difficulty so we can actually get me to hear what you're saying, Mr. Leonard, because it would be weird to try to complete. Oh, he's coming back in? Oh, okay. My producer is saying to tell you to sign out and sign back in. Okay? And then hopefully we'll be able to hear you then. In the meantime, here's what I'm going to do. Somebody sent me about a week ago a video. There was a job fair, not a job fair, but a call, an open call for job openings at, I think, a food store in Grand Bahama. And the response was overwhelming. And somebody sent me this video to show me how bad things are in Grand Bahama. Now, we know things are bad in Abaco, things are bad in New Providence, things bad all over. But like I said at the beginning of the show, Grand Bahama was catching hell before Dorian, before COVID. And so those two only compounded the situation. But let's go to this clip. This is shot by somebody in Grand Bahama whom I don't know who it is. And they're going to say some things on the video that you may or may not agree with. This is just that person's personal opinion. But I think the video speaks for itself as to the magnitude of need in Grand Bahama. Let's go to that clip, please.
Nobody in Grand Bahama is weak. This government need to do something. Create jobs for the young people and the citizens of the Bahamas. Y'all increasing VAT, but not pay raise. This is almost like 20-30% of Grand Bahama out here at Sawyers trying to get employed.
Serious need. People lined up, I mean, for what it seems like miles, just to try to get a job whenever a job opening is announced. There is some serious need. And we have to take a look at this weird relationship between the government of the Bahamas, the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and Hutchison when we are discussing what is going on, why Grand Bahama is in the state it's in. So Mr. Carey is back on now. Mr. Carey, can you
hear me now?
Perfectly. Okay.
Good. All right.
Whatever went wrong the first time, it's fixed now. Welcome to GPS.
Thank you very much. I think I should add, although I was former general counsel of the Port Authority, that I'm also the former president of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce from 89 to 91. So I started off being very Nassau-centric. Mm-hmm. Actually, what got me to Grand Bahama was I would come up from time to time as chamber president, and I saw the potential of Grand Bahama, and I decided this really is the future of the country. Right. So when I speak, I want people to appreciate the fact that I'm also speaking from somebody who's lived in Nassau and understands how Nassauvians and business people in Nassau think about Grand Bahama.
So you were attracted to Grand Bahama because you saw it as the future. But if you look at the condition of Grand Bahama now, it's worse than the past.
Absolutely.
How did we get there?
I think there are a number of issues. And you said it very well when you started off by talking about the various storms and everything. When I arrived in Grand Bahama in 98, the container port had just been built. The Grand Lacan, all the hotels, they were under construction. The Princess was doing well. There were flights going in and out even to 2 o'clock in the morning with the casino people. And then, yes, we got hit by first of all Francis, 3 weeks later by Jean. Mm-hmm. And then the following year, we got hit by Wilma. That is no excuse. Mm-hmm. And I refer to Grand Cayman. Cayman was hit in 2004, 2005 by Hurricane Ivan. It practically leveled the island. Between then and 2014, Cayman had something like $10 billion invested in it. Between 2005 and 2014, we'd be lucky if we had $50 million invested in Grand Bahama. And I think the part of the reason is there has been no plan. And I know recently the port came out with something, but there's nothing new in that. There's no vision in it at all. So I want to say that, we can't just lay it at the feet of some storms. No, we didn't have a plan. We didn't have a recovery plan, and we didn't have an economic plan. Part also is the country itself. We as a country still have not got an economic plan, and there was an attempt to do it 5 years ago, the 2040 vision, which was a very, very sizable 400-page document that was produced in cooperation with the Inter-American Development Bank. But I want to say, first of all, it's in large because we have no vision, and there's been poor leadership, both in the port and in governmental areas.
Well, you know what, Mr. Carey, we could end the show right there. Because you pretty much just put everything in a nutshell that we're going to be talking about for the next 2 hours.
Well, now we can lay it out. Now we can lay it out.
Exactly what the problem is. Listen, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Exactly.
There is no separation of the two. You cannot fail to plan and then be shocked and amazed and in dismay that you're failing.
Exactly. If you look at the success of Grand Bahama, there was Wallace Groves was a visionary, and I will, with some reluctance, give Stafford Sands credit for seeing that it was something that could be made that could really benefit the country as a whole. And initially, the airport, all of that was paid for by private industry. The harbor, all put in at no expense. Now, if you look at us in Nassau, we had to borrow millions of dollars over the years. Recently, we've managed to privatize some of that, but the harbor cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. If you look at a huge chunk of our national debt today was paying for the infrastructure at the airport and the harbor in Nassau itself. None of those that was required here until now, of course, with the government taking over the airport. And on top of that, under the Hawksbill Creek agreements that were signed back then, businesses coming to the Bahamas had certainty. They knew that if they did this, this, and this, they would get that, and that. Most recently, the legislation is hampering us tremendously now. The last government passed an act called the Incentives Act, the Grand Bahama Incentives Act, which I refer to as the Disincentives Act, which only deals with licensees. Now, and this government at the moment has extended the fact that one doesn't have to pay real property tax. But if you are a second home owner in Grand Bahama, you are now in double jeopardy. You have to pay real property tax. There's no way out of it unless we amend the law. And also, you have to pay service charges. Now, I should say to those in Nassau who very often feel that Grand Bahama gets a free ride, that everybody who owns property here pays service charges. My service charges, I worked out because I was talking to somebody in the former government. They were saying, well, you guys will have to pay real property. If I were to pay real property instead of service charges, and of course I would want to be like Nassau. If I'm paying real property, I don't want to have to pay for my garbage to be collected either. I could probably save at least $800 to $1,000 a year by paying real property tax, which then means that obviously the government is going to have to find more money in the public treasury to maintain the various services that my additional money had been paying up to that point. So if I cannot in all conscience advise somebody who's thinking of doing a second home in Grand Bahama to build one, because they are leaving themselves open to double jeopardy. The only people that benefited out of the Incentives Act was the GBPA and its partners, Hutchison and those companies. They were given a continued tax holiday without any real requirement, other than to come up with some plan, which to the best of my knowledge, they really haven't done yet. And the other part was that if you happen to be a licensee, you could apply to the government who, if in their discretion, felt like giving you a break on real property tax could do that. And also they could put in various requirements as to employment and this and that and the other. But there is no certainty there at all, and there's nothing incentive about that. So the legislation that we have, and most recently, this government has passed the environmental legislation, the Department of Environment Protection and trying to think of the planning and protection, which now applies to the port area. So now if I'm doing a project, I am now stuck with trying to comply with both the Grand Bahama Port Authority's regulatory requirements and with the government's requirements. Now, I will say this about the Port Authority's regulatory requirements. Usually the Port Authority's regulatory body has moved at a faster pace. And so you would get your responses much more quickly than through government. There's a reason for that. The persons that work for the Port Authority are not civil servants. Very often, and I know I may be, treading on a few people's feet, but the civil service, if you do something wrong, there are no consequences for it. You may get transferred to another department, but your paycheck doesn't suffer. You don't suffer the loss of a job. You make a mistake in the private sector, and you're gone.
Yeah.
And so if I don't have to worry, if I don't do my job properly, I get paid at the end of the month if I'm a civil servant. And if I don't do it really, really badly, the worst that's going to happen is I'll get sent to another department. But if you mess up in private sector, you're gone. And so you've got to get your job done. So in all fairness to the Port Authority, their regulatory body worked far more efficiently than any government regulatory body I ever dealt with. And I also, I've been practicing since 1977. I was an article student before that. So I've been heavily involved in various applications and things since 1972. And I can tell you that the port certainly always, in any applications I was making, even when I was in Nassau representing people who wanted to do business in Freeport, they reacted far more quickly. It was very efficient. And so now by having us not only going to the port, but now also having to wait on the government for environmental things and maybe later on for license, real property tax exemptions, that certainly does not encourage anybody to want to invest in Grand Bahama.
This is a very grim picture indeed. And you have to ask the question, and I know we're going to spend an entire show trying to unravel the mystery here, if you could call it that. But you have to ask the question as to why the powers that be don't seem to know this, or if they do know this, why aren't they doing something about it? One of the things that you said in the article, you said that the government has rolled over and played dead by permitting Hutchison Whampoa to dump all of its loss-making assets on the Bahamian taxpayer. And we have heard other people say this, that using the terminology of modern day talk, they don't negotiate like a boss. So you go into this environment where the negotiation skills of the persons that we have who have been elected to govern the country are, for want of a better word, lacking. Really, really poor negotiation skills. And there are some who question whether or not that is intentional, whether or not they know better but will not do better for whatever reason. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are a number of issues at play. Over the years, we were always struggling to try and get people to come and invest in the country. There was a mentality of practically begging people to come and invest. The only problem, and the interesting thing is, and I'll sort of go off on a tangent here. If you look at the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, as it was worded, Stafford Sands made sure that there were certain things that the port had to do in order to get other things. The original harbor and everything, it was only a lease. If they had not dredged the harbor to a certain depth by a certain time, right. If they also had to put in housing and this and that and the other, if they didn't comply with that, they didn't get the Crown grant for the land they wanted to develop. Here, it's got to a point now where we practically go out and grovel at people's feet to get them to invest. And that a good example at the moment, when I look at it, is the cruise ship industry. We're practically falling over backwards for them. They need us more than we need them. They're building, tens of huge ships right now. They need ports. So there should be no reason why we don't put in various requirements that if you don't do this by such and such a time, this is the penalty you will pay. Hutchison is a good example of that. They've got 50% of Devco, which owns roughly 60, 70,000 acres of land on Grand Bahama. It's not being developed. They haven't done anything with it since they got their interest in it 21 years ago. But there's no penalty if they don't. And if you read their annual reports, and they're public companies, both their harbor side and the land side, the land side is very clear. If we don't, because they have various investments in numerous countries, if they don't do something, we are subject to a penalty. If we don't do this, we're subject to a penalty. So they get on with it. But instead, we've just taken the attitude of, oh, well, we're desperate to have you here. And that should not be the case.
Why do you think that is, though? Why? Why is that happening?
I have no idea. It's beyond me. I had pushed for the government to do a compulsory acquisition of the harbor. I am convinced, having watched what Hutchison did with both the hotel and with the airport, that if we get a strong hurricane up the south and it damages the harbor severely, they will just shut down the harbor, leave it closed, and wait to collect their money. The fact the Bahamians are struggling, for them, is totally irrelevant.
Don't care.
They don't care, and it's a mind. Both we all have our national sort of what I call national mindsets and the way we operate. And you were talking about paradigm shifts in the opening of of your program, and that's really important. But the Chinese business person is amoral. It's not like he's out to nail somebody. It's not like but he's not out to help anybody either. He's just out there to make the most out of what he's got. And I am sure that Hutchison has business disruption insurance. I don't know, but I mean, obviously most big companies would. So it benefits them to leave the airport shut, because at least they can then claim on their insurance for the loss of business.
Right.
It would do them good to leave the harbor shut and wait, and collect money on it. And then, as they did with the hotel and with the airport, just take your insurance money and run. And they've left us with nothing. Now, if the harbor is the one area that can make money, it's got ships coming in all the time. And I am sure that if somebody had sat down and taken a look at the harbor's books at the end of the year, you know that the newspaper reported the losses that the airport had incurred, but I'm sure that the harbor more than made up for that in profits of vessels coming in, cruise ships calling, and things like that. So, and even now, container ships still come through. Most recently, this last weekend saw one of the cruise ships in having some work done on it at the shipyard. The harbor company makes money. So it would have made sense for us to do a compulsory acquisition of both on the grounds of public importance. These are ports of entry that we as a people on Grand Bahama, had it not been for the harbor after both Matthew and Dorian, I really don't know what we would have done, because in each case, Hutchison had no plan for the airport. They couldn't even provide electricity to the airport. And which after I start with Hurricane Floyd flooded. We then got Francis, Jean, Wilma, Sandy. By the time Matthew rolled around, you would have thought they would have figured out that they were going to have flooding or problems at the airport, and they needed to make it more hurricane resistant. And they did nothing about it except just replace stuff each go round. They lifted a few things up, but there wasn't any real plan, or if there was, they decided they were better off taking their loss of business insurance. So, and then the point raised by one person in government to me was, oh, well, you can't do that. You can't take something from the investor. Excuse me. In 1993-94, the government took by by acquisition, compulsory acquisition, Rock Sound Airport. Rock Sound Airport was a privately owned airport.
Mhm.
They did a compulsory acquisition. So there's nothing to have prevented a compulsory acquisition of the harbor.
Right.
Indeed, my concern also was that you do it before you agree to sell the hotel, because Royal Caribbean was really interested in doing the harbor. The hotel was sort of an add-on, but the harbor expansion would have been about $150 million invested into the harbor. So that in itself, I think that's the number that's been in the papers, 150, maybe a bit more, but I don't recall.
Mhm.
If you do that, and you know that's going to happen, do a compulsory acquisition before you sign anything. Then when you sign it, you've just added a value of $150 million to the harbor, which then makes it more viable if you need to borrow any money to do something to the airport. But instead, we decided just to roll over and play dead and say, okay, we'll take the airport for $1. So, that's that's just irritating, and it's going to cost us probably that decision will probably cost the taxpayer $100 million over the next 5 to 10 years.
Wow. This may be a crazy thought, but maybe we need to look at hiring some mediators, some negotiators. It's because these people are clueless. And when I say these people, I'm not talking specifically to this administration.
Right.
Because this problem has been going on for decades.
Yep.
That led us to this place.
Yep.
So do we need to look at outside negotiators? Don't answer that. We have to take a commercial break. We can talk about that on the other side of the break, as well as some other factors that have led Grand Bahama to where it is today. But God knows the people of Grand Bahama have suffered long enough, and we got to find a way to fix the problem. Enough talk. It's time to fix the problem. So we're going to talk more about that on the other side of the break. This is GPS. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Stay with us. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Listen to Glory 93.9 FM for the best mix of traditional, classic, country, contemporary, and Caribbean gospel in New Providence, Bahamas.
Dress, hats off, looking like I walked out of catalog. Everybody wanna know where I got it from. Catwalk, boutique, where we make fashion statements. Catwalk, boutique, where we make fashion statements.
For the latest styles in women's clothing and accessories, visit Catwalk Boutique on Robertson Road East at the Hellron Plaza. At Catwalk Boutique, we make fashion statements.
For all your building needs, it's Carib Construction and Project Management on Gladstone Road. We build it all. Schools, homes, hotels, and more, including structures requiring a Phase 3 electrical contractor. We also provide project management services. The first step towards your dream building begins at Carib Construction and Project Management. Call us at 376-1556 or 341-4466.
Executive Printers is your one-stop shop for all your branding and customization needs. Letterheads, envelopes, business cards, invoices, share and gift certificates, rubber stamps, vouchers, funeral programs, brochures, flyers, banners, and promotional items like mugs, water bottles, mouse pads, and key rings, all with personable service and great quality. No project is too small or too large. For great turnaround and competitive pricing, make an executive decision. Call us at 393-5011.
At Lee Air, safety is our number one priority. Flying since 1996, we offer scheduled flights into Fresh Creek and Mangrove Key Andros and Great Harbor Key, Berry Island, twice daily, 7 days a week. Affordable charter services are also available to anywhere in the Bahamas and the Caribbean. Lee Air Charter Services. Call 225-3267, 702-7127, or 322-1317 for reservations.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. but it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Alive. Alive. Believe in best. And by Tropical Gyros. Not just good food, it's an experience. Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is the former Grand Bahama Port Authority in-house counsel, attorney Carey Leonard. We're talking about the plight of Grand Bahama today. I'm calling this show Profits and Loss, the plight of Grand Bahama. We would love to hear from you. Our telephone lines are 828-3543, 828-3543. And 828-2543 is the number to text us on. 828-2543 is the text line. Again, 828-3543 is the number to call. As we would have discussed in the first portion of the show, much of, if not all of the problem that has led to Grand Bahama being in the state that it is today is simply a lack of planning. Ironically, though, one of the things that made Grand Bahama so special back in the day, because as I said on a show a couple of weeks ago, Grand Bahama was once the jewel of the Bahamas. I mean, that city was it was just amazing to see what was happening there. And that obviously took a degree of planning on the part of the visionary of Freeport specifically. So how do we go from that, where there was an obvious plan, to what we see today, where I mean, it is just beyond a shadow of what it once was because of a lack of plan. I don't even know how to put this, but how do we go from that high degree of planning to what we see happening now? And how do we get back to where we have a concrete plan in place, where our negotiators are negotiating like bosses and are ensuring that the benefits and needs of our people are put first?
Well, I think there are some interesting things to think about this. One of the reasons that I think Freeport went downhill has to go back to a number of the policies of former governments over the years.
Okay.
The Immovable Properties Act. It didn't carve out Grand Bahama. And there were a number of things that could have been done, a little less forcefully, and it could have been done more diplomatically. The other side to the issue is that the businesses, a number of foreign businesses usually don't like to take the government to court to enforce their rights. They will in their own countries. All you got to do is look at the UK for judicial review cases. Branson for Virgin Rail didn't get his franchise. Within a matter of days, he was before the courts having a judicial review, and the courts agreed with him, and the government had to redo its entire process. There have been few people who've been prepared to challenge. I will say Fred Smith started challenging back in 1982 or 83 with respect to licensing. He was absolutely correct. The court agreed with him. And over the years, he has done a number of judicial reviews, primarily actually dealing with customs more than anybody else, because they seem to try to overreach more than everybody else. But and he has been successful in every single solitary case. He and I recently both took the government to court over the McKinsey report for the Hawksbill, when they were doing the Hawksbill Review Committee, because they refused to hand over the document, which is paid for by the public. They deliberately delayed the matter as much as they possibly could. But even then, the government, the court still came up and said, no, you must release the report to them. So I think government would be more responsive the more government gets pressured to do the right thing. And again, for their own departments to do the right thing. But as long as people can get away with it, then you can understand why government does certain things and doesn't worry about other things, because why should they worry? Nobody's going to complain. We had an instance where Mr. Smith took customs to court, and he asked the judge for a ruling, and he says, this affects all the licensees of Grand Bahama, to which the judge said, I only see you, Mr. Smith, in front of me. I don't see anybody else. Wow. And that part of the problem is we are everybody, do this, do that. But when things get a little tough, we have a tendency as a people to say, I don't want to upset anybody. Well, you can't expect things to work fine all the time and not be prepared to take people on.
Well, here's the thing: if you're going to bake a cake, you got to break some eggs.
Well, you do, but I think the sad thing is the lack of support when you're doing it. It takes me my first example of that was I don't know if you recall, but we do have Sunday shopping these days. But I had gone to the Prime Minister at the time and said, we've got the Norway coming in. We're losing 100,000 tourists every year in Nassau. We need to have the shops open on a Sunday because it only comes in on the Sunday. Right. He says, well, I could get everybody to vote for Sunday shopping tomorrow, but you got to deal with the Christian Council. And I went out, and if you look at the Guardian and the Tribune, there are numerous headlines over and over again. And when I had a meeting with the members of the Chamber of Commerce, we couldn't get everybody in the building. There were so many people that were there. Oh, yes, go ahead and do it. The second meeting, I may have had 40 people. When things really began to get tough, there probably weren't more than a dozen people that showed up. When we finally got it approved, everybody was there again. So my point is that you as a people, we really, we don't want to upset this and we don't want to upset that. I'm afraid you just have to. And we also have to learn to agree to disagree, and say, okay, I agree that we will disagree on this particular point, but we don't have to be enemies just because we don't agree on everything.
Exactly.
And so that I think is it. We were talking about planning. Yeah. The other thing that I think occurred was because of the various, and in part it was immigration as well, but the movable property, the Bahamianization pushes, a number of investors felt that they didn't have any security or certainty. So many of them sold out while they could get out and got whatever they could to get out. And in many instances, places like Cayman and Turks and Caicos benefited from it. I was talking about Cayman earlier on, just prior to the COVID-19 crisis. They were running an unemployment rate of about 4.7%, when we were running up around 10 or 12%. So again, if you have a plan, which they do, and you are much more open-minded to immigration, and maybe I should also digress on immigration for a minute, which I think is critical to the success of Grand Bahama and to the country as a whole. I am a Bahamian educated lawyer. I never went to university.
Okay.
And over the years, myself and another member, we had to deal with a crack commercial team out of London. And we actually got the better of them on the paperwork at the end of the day. And their own people were extremely upset. So I'm not afraid to take on foreigners. Any of us who have ever gone away to school or to university, we've been competing with foreigners all the time. And Bahamians, once they know what they have to do, and I find this so frustrating about us, we are perfectly capable of doing it as well, if not better than anybody else. Yeah. Our Olympic teams show that. One of the best examples, I always use this example for clients who are coming in and I hear somebody complaining about Bahamians, is go fly on Western Air from Freeport to Nassau or Nassau to Freeport. 9 times out of 10, you're airborne even before the actual departure time. They run an extremely efficient airline. It is Bahamian owned, Bahamian run, and it is works very, very well. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason why we can't repeat that in everything that we do.
Yeah, we definitely can. It just takes the will to do it. And I think that's a big part of the problem, not just in Grand Bahama, but elsewhere in the country where we're experiencing difficulties. We just don't seem to have the will to fix the problem. Everybody can identify the problem. You have many people who have solutions as to how to fix the problem, but where is the will to get it done? Because you can't get it done without the will to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. But you've got to be prepared. There are going to be some tough times to achieve that. And one of my biggest concerns, we talk about the progress for Grand Bahama. We rely completely, really, on the industrial sector, and again, you got to give Wallace Groves credit. Mm-hmm. We still have Borco, Buckeye today. We still have we've got Pharmachem, which replaced Syntex in many ways. So you still got the chemical industry. You've still got the harbors running. Bahama Rock was Dravo originally, and that was a brilliant idea. What they did was, what Wallace Groves did was, in order to get the harbor dredged, he brought in a company that needed rock. So he cut a deal with them. They paid him so much per yard of the rock that they dredged out. He used that to build the seawalls and everything else within the harbor. So he basically got the harbor built for no cost and dredged. And I watch us in Nassau spending $100 million to dredge the harbor. Why? And what return are we getting back? But Wallace Groves had that vision. And he was, what we do need is we need new owners in the Port Authority who have a lot of money, who are prepared to spend money again on the infrastructure with a vision of where they want to take it. And I think that sort of, we've run out of that vision. Just as we talk about the country as a whole needs to pay more attention to the industrial area and to Grand Bahama. If you look at the population of Grand Bahama in 1955 versus today, today Grand Bahama holds it's the second largest population in the country. That 1/6 of the population lives on Grand Bahama. So that wouldn't be but for Wallace Groves and the Hawksbill Creek Agreement.
Oh, this is so much to unravel.
It is.
So much to unravel. Obviously, we aren't going to get it all covered in one show, but we will do the best that we can here. I want to go back to something that you said that was quoted in the article in the Tribune. You said that having sold the Grand Bahama to the government for $65 million in early September 2018, Hutchison Whampoa has now completed its second disposal by handing Freeport's main aviation gateway over to the government via a deal structure that you described as potentially fatal to hopes of fulfilling the city's potential as a transshipment distribution and logistics hub. Please explain why you feel that way.
All right. In order to have I think to have a successful cargo hub at the airport, you need to be able to coordinate what's coming in through the harbor. There's a 740-acre area we used to call this, well, it's the CA Business Center. Only one building has been built on it in 25 years. Because you've got to coordinate the ability and to develop that area so you can have what they call a sterilized area for the purposes of customs. And you need to be able to coordinate that needs money invested in it to get it up and running. And then you are able to get cargo in, break it down from the containers that come in, and send it out by air, various shipments, sort of like not quite, but like an Amazon, where you break stuff up and you send some to Miami and you'll send something to New York. You may send something down to South America, but you use this as the hub to do a lot of that work. And there may be some businesses that will probably do some light assembly that you can take advantages. Well, if you sign to up to WTO, you could take advantages of various limits that some countries have, and in order to get around those, you would then do construction manufacturing in the Bahamas up to the necessary percentage in order to be able to export the product. So there are a number of areas where you can do it. But at the moment, Hutchison owns the harbor. And every time you deal with Hutchison, and you just have to look at the hotel, how long it took them before they decided to walk away from it. But over and over again, we kept hearing that there were people interested in buying the hotel, and they would make an offer and then, come back from Hong Kong. Oh, we'll ask them for so much more, until they got tired of it and they just walked away. The problem, and that what they've managed to do, and by the way, they had no idea how to develop the hotel or Davco. We were talking about the land. You own a hotel and 2 golf courses. You would bring golfers in to play golf and everything else, play various rounds. As you go around the golf course, you say, here's this type of lifestyle you can have if you come and move to Grand Bahama, and those lots are available for sale. Mm-hmm. You don't even bother to do that. Oh, well, and then you take the harbor and the airport and you put them in separate silos. So you're not providing additional funds to the airport to lower the cost of bringing aircraft in, so that you can encourage more tourism and more purchases of land in Davco, creating greater profits. Mm-hmm. You close everything off and then wonder why it isn't working. And they clearly had no idea how to run a tourism hotel. Mm. They spent, I can't remember how much it was, but it was about the same as Kerzner did when he first publicized Atlantis. And the value that Kerzner got far exceeded anything that Al-Luqaya got from their advertising campaign when they opened. And it was clear that Kerzner knew what he was doing, and Hutchison didn't. They're 8,000 miles away. You have a different psyche of people who really are afraid of making, they don't want to lose face. They don't want to stick their necks out or anything, and everybody's got to toe the line. And so there's no idea of, oh, well, we've got a problem here, let's fix it. Well, we've got a problem here. How are we going to hide it? Is more the attitude in China. So the net effect was that you were struggling with the hotel, but you did nothing to put it right. And that's the problem.
So one of the things that you reiterated is that really the government should have purchased Freeport Harbor Company, the airport's parent, by compulsory acquisition, if needed, and from 50-50 owners, Hutchison and the Grand Bahama Port Authority, along with the 741-acre Sea Air Business Center, because it is your view that without these 2 assets, the Minister of Tourism and Aviation will struggle to fulfill his mandate of transforming Grand Bahama International Airport into an aviation cargo hub and profit center. Explain why it is your view that this is only a piece of the puzzle, and unless we get that entire, all of the pieces together, this just won't work.
Well, first of all, you've got to be able to develop the Sea Air Business Center. That's owned by Hutchison. Mm-hmm. They are not going to, once they see that somebody may want to do something, my experience with them has been, if you're developing something, they want to know, how much are you going to spend? Then they seem to sit there and say, okay, now how much is it going to cost you to develop it? How much are you going to sell it for? And then they'll decide, okay, we'll up the price. So you've got about a 10 or 15% profit margin, and that's it. But they will sit there and negotiate with you. You'll never get going. And a good example, and it's been in the papers, so I can say it, over and over again, the Royal Caribbean has been trying to, we hear the hotel deal hasn't closed because they still haven't finished their negotiations with Hutchison in the harbor. But they've been at it for 5 years. And so if we've got to deal with a company that just won't do anything that benefits the community at all, and they're always trying to extract the last possible penny they can, you will never get it going. I mean, if it takes 5 years to negotiate with a cruise line that wants to invest $150 million, God knows what's going to happen if you're saying, well, I'm trying to get a cargo hub going. You know, I mean, they're not interested. You know, we heard years ago, and the former prime minister announced in 2014 that the extension to the container port was going to happen. We are now 7 years down the road, and they still haven't done it. So having them involved in any way, to me, is the problem. That is the knife in the heart, because you just can't get anything going. I should explain that compulsory acquisition doesn't mean you take it from the owners. You acquire it, you take it you take possession of it, but you must compensate them for the value of the property that you have taken.
Right.
Now, I felt that knowing Hutchison, they would never agree to whatever anybody offers them. So if you can't agree, you can go to the Supreme Court, which is what happened in the Rock Sound case. And then the court will finally at some point adjudicate how much the asset is worth. And at that point, the act says that you have to give the person you just took the land from 5% per year interest on whatever that final number is. So if we took the harbor, it's unlikely that we'd have to pay anything for 3 to 5 years. And then once we did, it would be 5% on that on whatever that amount was. So and also we would then have control. We could have negotiated with Royal Caribbean, finished up the deal and finished the hotel already, which obviously hasn't happened. We could be figuring out how we're going to get the financing to help run the airport and get it up and running as quickly as possible. Now we're running around looking for some other private company to try and help us to raise the money to do the work that we need to do. This should have been, we should be 6-8 months ahead of right now, well on our planning and maybe even seeing some works coming to completion at the airport instead of we're sitting here waiting. And that's the problem.
And as you put it, the government has instead saddled the people with a loss maker because they're too afraid or too scared to do anything with Hutchison. Again, quoting the article, it says, the unfortunate thing is both governments continue to bow at the feet of Hutchison. And as long as they bow at the feet of Hutchison, the people of Grand Bahama suffer. When you buy a company, it's the seller who's responsible to pay off the staff, not the buyer. Everything you look at, they're literally rolling over and playing dead.
Well, I mean, we've taken over the airport. I do not understand why it was agreed that we the people, would pay for the severance. When if you look at any of the employment laws and things like that, the vendor pays their people out, and you then take over a clean situation. But instead, and no doubt it's because they'll say, well, because they only asked us to pay them $1. Well, if it was something that was losing so much money, of course they were happy to get rid of it for $1. And on top of that, they're getting their insurance money of, I don't know, $20-30 million is coming out. I'm hoping that the members of the Port Authority will I'm assuming they're going to get their 50% cut of that, so that they will put some of that money back into the port area, I hope.
I have a comment from one of our Facebook viewers that says, it's the port that has Grand Bahama in a state of chaos, along with corrupt politicians. How do you respond to that?
I think the port, to a large extent, it's you can't do one without the other. The Hawksbill Creek Agreement requires the Port Authority to do certain things. There are covenants in there. It makes the port the regulator. They're responsible to do a number of items. However, it is also the government's responsibility to make sure that the port is carrying out its duties as it ought to. If you look at anything, for example, the water, we're all complaining about the water. So many of us were replacing water heaters and everything else because of the terrible. And you daren't drink it. You got to get bottled water to drink. And this is now 2 years almost since Dorian. why hasn't the government sent a group in to take a look at the water company and do an audit? Are they operating properly? Did they have proper planning? What planning do they need to have in place? And if necessary, hire some experts from outside to come in and look, give a report, and then, the Port Authority, either you do this, this, and this, or you guys are going to have to find somebody to buy you out. There's none of that going on, and without one enforcing the other, why should the port bother?
So I have a question that's been sent to me from Graham Weatherford via text. He says, ask him how the Port Authority can work for the average Bahamian. No duty, no VAT, $3 gas, etc.
How does it work for the average Bahamian? Well, first of all, he's got it wrong, because the $3 gas is only for licensees. My car is blue plated. I pay gas like everybody, same tax on my car as everybody else in the country. So the idea that Freeport has a free ride is a non-starter. I pay duty on everything I get from my house, just like any other Bahamian. So it's not as if the Grand Bahamians are all getting a free ride. The license, part of the thing was to encourage the licensees to come here and to set up businesses. That you get that, but these businesses are also paying service charges and business license fees. Those service charges and business license fees maintain the roads and verges and things like that around Grand Bahama. Apart from just the airport and the harbor, that were all built and constructed and maintained and paid for by the private sector. All the roads are private roads and maintained by the private sector. So there is no burden on the Ministry of Works for road repairs in the 230 square mile area of Grand Bahama, which is actually the port area is bigger than the island of New Providence, probably by it's nearly double the size. So the road works and all of that, all the electrical infrastructure and everything, water and sewerage, has all been put in at no expense to the public treasury. And the only thing they gave up was some duty on gas and things like that. But compared to what got invested in the country, far, far exceeds anything. And up until a few years ago, I met with somebody who is very familiar with the finances of our country, has been a minister in government, and we could not get the net profit to government out of Grand Bahama lower than $60 million a year. Now, in some years, you'll note that I think it was 2000, I can't remember when Buckeye did their purchase, but if I recall, I remember that there was, I was informed that the $180 million of stamp tax was paid. So, all right, they can buy their gas for $1 less than I can. But they, by the same token, A, you wouldn't have Buckeye here, and B, you'd never have seen $180 million of stamp tax. So overall, doing that has benefited the Bahamian public tremendously.
Okay, we have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Carey Leonard. We're talking profits and loss, the plight of Grand Bahama. And obviously, at some point in the show, we're going to talk about the way forward and what Mr. Carey's views are on how we can fix this problem once and for all. So that and more is on the other side of the break. Stay with us. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Photography at its best. Professional and quality service. Warren Grant Photography specializing in weddings, portraits, sunset images, events, and photo booth. Creating compelling images of life-changing events. Make that step today and call 242-424-5678 or email Warren_Grant251@yahoo.com or check out our website at www.warrengrantphotography.com. Facebook and Instagram, Warren Grant Photography. We change moments into memories.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. Excuse me. Anybody have some American single dollars, please?
Are you sure you going for it?
Well, my mommy sent me to the cooler ice machine, but I only have Bahamian money. Oh, well, tell your mommy she related. Just take Bahamian currency now, child.
You heard right. Cooler Ice Bahamas now accepts U.S. and Bahamian currency. So pull up to any of our locations and get your freshly bagged ice for as low as $3. A Cooler Ice machine is right around the corner. So visit us at Arawak Key, Montague Boat Ramp, Porter's Key Dock, Superwash locations, Nassau Street, Gibbs Corner, Wolf Road, Prince Charles Drive, Charles Sanders Highway, Soldier Road, Carmichael Road, and our 4 new locations: Superwash, Carmichael Road West, BPSU Building on Wolf Road, Rolls Auto on East Street South, and Joe Farrington Road, opposite Checkers Cafe. Cooler Ice Bahamas, fresh and ready whenever you are.
Looking for an extraordinary junior high school with caring, qualified staff and affordable tuition? Then come visit us at Elite School of Excellence, an affiliate of First Step Academy. ABECA-focused and Ministry of Education approved, we foster discipline, integrity, and wisdom while molding our students for success. Call us at 341-8846 or stop by First Step Academy Schools on Fire Trail and Soldy Roads for more information.
At the Shirley Street Plaza, you'll find Le Petit Gourmet, a small cafe that's big on flavor. Handcrafted delights made with love will not only please your palate, but feed your soul. Call us at 394-1251. 8 to 12 minutes is all it takes for a burglar to rob your home or business. Security Systems International provides professional and affordable solutions for both. Call 396-5000 for your customized quote. Gwen's Alterations provides professional services for all your tailoring needs, including face masks to keep you safe and in style. A stitch in time saves 9. So call us today at 393-6227.
Escape from the city life to Bacon Air Beach Resort in Pirateswell, Mayaguana. Relax in one of 16 air-conditioned rooms just steps away from the ocean. Enjoy scrumptious dishes in our waterfront dining room. Sip on a tropical cocktail, or if you must, stay connected with wireless internet. Nestled on one of the most beautiful beaches in the Bahamas, Bacon Air Beach Resort offers a unique vacation experience. For reservations, call 339-3726 or 463-0182.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting sugar-free berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Easy Car Sales, home of the electric vehicle. Visit easy242.com and free yourself from gas. And welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I am your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Carey Leonard, former head of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, as well as former in-house counsel for the Grand Bahama Port Authority. We're talking profit and loss today, the plight of Grand Bahama. Would love to hear from you. Our telephone lines are 828-3543. 828-3543, 828-3543 is the number to call, and our text line is 828-2543. 828-2543 is the text line, okay? So, we're talking Grand Bahama. We all know the state that Grand Bahama is in, and
for those of you not old enough to remember, it was not always that way. Grand Bahama, Freeport in particular, was truly a jewel to behold. Clearly, the way that it was laid out and run, there was intricate planning that went into Freeport. We look at where it's at today. I showed you a clip at the beginning of the show with people lined up just for a handful of jobs available, hundreds of people showing up because so many people are out of work. And yes, I know that this is a situation across the country really since COVID-19. But as I would have said earlier, Grand Bahama's woes began long before COVID-19, long before Dorian. We're just catching up to them as it relates to this kind of suffering. And so the question now is, what do we do to fix it? And I'm obviously going to talk to Mr. Carey about his views on whether or not this is so far gone that there's nothing that can be done, or if something can be done, what can we do? What should we be doing to turn this situation around? Grand Bahamians have suffered for a very, very long time, people. Very, very long time that island has been going through. And we need to figure out how to fix this. So let's turn our attention now to some solutions, Mr. Carey.
Okay, I think the first thing you need to do is we have to create excitement again. I mean, that was one of the key elements that Wallace Groves was able to do, was he created excitement and got people so interested they wanted to invest in Grand Bahama.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the, so how do we do that?
Yes.
The first thing I would say is that we need to pass some new legislation. Now, the current government said before they got elected that they would repeal the Grand Bahama Incentives Act, which I really believe they should do, because as I say, it's a disincentives act. There's no sense in coming and investing in Grand Bahama as long as you have that ridiculous piece of legislation in place. So that's one. We have to create, apart from interest and excitement, you also have to create certainty for the investor. So the new legislation would have to provide that certainty, as did the Hawkesbill Creek Agreement. But some of those things have actually gone by the board. They've expired. So some of them need to be renewed. Some of them need to be reviewed. As I say, the Incentives Act, the only ones that got off scot-free were the Grand Bahama Port Authority and DevCo. I can understand if DevCo was getting off without having to pay real property tax, if it was continuing to invest tens of millions of dollars a year, as it used to under Wallace Groves, in developing areas, promoting sales. And you were talking about the jobs. The average second homeowner, he's got to maintain his house. He's going to be here 6 to 8 months a year. He's going to need the food store. He's going to need electricians. He's the type of guy that will, make sure that he gets his car properly maintained. He's going to need, people to assist him with that. Some of them may even decide they want to set up a small business here or operate here rather than operate in their own country because the climate's so nice. I mean, Grand Bahama it has so much to offer. I mean, even though I've been here 23 years now and seen things go downhill, I cannot help but still see the potential, the infrastructure. This island has tremendous potential. We need to focus on our industrial area tremendously. What other businesses can we bring in that would support those?
I want you to stick a pin in that because we have a caller who's been holding on the line. So let's go to the phone lines and then we'll go talk about supporting businesses. Caller, welcome to GPS.
God bless. Good morning, Michelle and to your guests. How you doing?
Good morning. Great. How are you?
All right. I didn't mind holding. Is it Mr. Carey?
Leonard, Carey Leonard.
Yes. How are you doing, Mr. Leonard, sir?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Okay. All right, sir. Before I contribute to your topic, Michelle, just a quick question. Is it Friday coming or Monday of next week that our holiday independence will be celebrated? Anybody knows?
I think it's Monday.
Yeah.
Monday. Oh, okay. What I'm wanting to ask you, Mr. Carey, several things. I want to put out
Mr. Leonard.
That's all right. That's okay. I answered the both.
I made that mistake, right?
All the time. Don't worry.
Yeah, Mr. Leonard.
That's all right.
It's so easy to call either Leonard Carey is easy to say that.
All the time. Don't worry.
Right. Okay, Mr. Leonard. My observation as a Bahamian in regards to why our country, in my view, is I dare say 100% below potential, is because of corruption. And I'm talking about nepotism and cronyism.
Yeah.
Governments, unfortunately, allowing special interests, no matter what quarter it may come from, to rule the day, than allowing the best interest for the masses to rule the day. That is my humble opinion. I believe that is what's suffocated and been killing the economy of the Bahamas. Point number 2. When you have the cabinet of a country such as ours being the judge and the jury in respect to what projects come into the country and whether or not they are approved, the cabinet now, in my view, you have the potential for cronyism, especially to rear its ugly head, wherein certain projects may or may not come in, and then you have businesses being funneled to certain persons in the know, the friends, family, lover syndrome kind of a thing. The masses of the country, indeed, again, suffers because the playing field is not even. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'd like to ask you, sir, 2 things. You talked about the Grand Bahama Encouragement Act. Why was that put in? And number 2, what benefits will there be to the Bahamas right now if we as a country were to get rid of the Hawksbill Creek Agreement? And if we were to get rid of the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, then my third question would be, what would be a better, more practical, more nationwide, more inclusive legislation to be put in place, not only to affect Grand Bahama, but particularly, yes, to affect Grand Bahama? Can you answer those 3 questions for me? So I'll hang up and listen to your response to those 3 points.
All right. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, I think the answer to he's absolutely right. And there are a number of problems there. And the first thing I would say is legislation. The advantage originally of the Hawksbill Creek Agreement was if you did this, this, and this, you got that. The current Investment Act that they're proposing, if you come and you buy some property, you come and do a business, if you apply and become a licensee, and if you make an application to the government, and if the government feels like giving you a break, you'll get the real property tax exemption. What I'm proposing is that you do legislation. If you come here and if you invest so much and you do this and that and the other, then you will get your break, and you will get that break for X number of years. And so you will know exactly where you stand, and you can say, right, I will invest $1 million, or in the case of a big pharmaceutical or a manufacturing thing, $80-100 million in the Bahamas. And I keep coming back and if we were to I don't think we should abolish the HCA. But sorry, let me just go back to the thing about the legislation and the certainty, is that would cut out the opportunity for corruption, and it would cut out the opportunity for the nepotism, because you now are no longer asking somebody to exercise their discretion. You are saying, I am complying with the law by doing this, this, and this. And if you look at many, many countries, again, I'll digress for a second. If I want to do a trademark in the United States, I can tell you that it would probably cost you about $5,000 to get your trademark done. And it's going to take you approximately, as long as there are no people who are objecting, it'll take you about 6 months. If you ask me how long and how much it's going to cost you to do a trademark in the Bahamas, the answer is, I can't tell you. In America, the trademarks office must reply to me within 21 days of the application, or it's deemed to be approved. Under our law, well, I got to wait. or I got to maybe pay somebody to do something more quickly.
Mm.
But it's going to be 3 to 5 years. It depends on how many trips I have to make to the various offices to try and push the matter along. So it could cost $10,000, it could cost $20,000. I have no idea. So why would I want to be doing business here when I know, for example, and in the US, I can get it done because the law is set out and it is clear. When the US and the trademark sends me something, I must reply to them within so many days. The interesting thing was, I was working with somebody who was trying to deal with citizenship for their kid in the UK. They come back to you within X number of days. They give you so many days to get back to them. And the process moves. I've got applications for people who have every right to be Bahamians. Their applications have been going on for 5 and 10 years and still no resolution. So legislation with definite time frames. This is what, this is what other countries have. This, quite frankly, is what the World Trade Organization requires in a lot of their things. They require certainty. So what they do is they take the decision-making out of politicians or ministers or whoever. They no longer have a discretion. What happens is, if you do this, you're entitled to the following things. And so it takes this discretionary thing completely out of it. And no, oh, well, I could probably do this for you, but I got a cousin over here. No, doesn't apply at all. And so that's one of the reasons I've always been very much in favor of pushing the World Trade Organization, because it really would, it's not so much, and by the way, World Trade, more trade is done in services than in goods, and this country deals in services. So we really should be part of it. But the point is that it makes gives business certainty. And therefore, people would want to invest in the Bahamas and create jobs. And I come back to this industrial area where many of the jobs, especially in the chemical areas, everybody's got to have a degree. You've got salaries of $40,000, $80,000 a year, plus all sorts of benefits. That far outweighs us running around trying to open a hotel to give a maid a job. The income that she may be able to get from her family and move into other fields other than just being a maid. There are a lot of people in this country that want to do more than they're doing, but there isn't the opportunity to do it. And part of it is because we are not creating that opportunity. If we need to move Grand Bahama forward, but we've got to do it, I would say, especially through the industrial area. That is the one that, in spite of hurricanes, doesn't matter. Oh, and you talked about the Hawkesbill Creek Agreement. The advantage of the Hawkesbill Creek Agreement is if my factory is damaged, I don't have to run to the minister and ask him, can I please bring in the following items duty-free, and wait for a response. I can get on the phone, call so-and-so, and have it sent in right away, which is why a number of businesses were up and running so very, very quickly. And so the Hawkesbill Creek Agreement has a lot going for it. We need new legislation to reinforce what was there, to fix what's wrong in the Hawkesbill Creek Agreement, so that we can create more employment in this country and good employment in this country, so that those with degrees are going to want to come back to this country.
You touched on the WTO, and I have a question for you as it relates to the Hawkesbill Creek Agreement. How would ascension to the WTO affect that pre-existing agreement?
It doesn't affect it. And I worked with the advisor to the Bahamas on WTO, and the way it worked is because the port area is not being subsidized by the government, which it's not. We could show, certainly at that point, we could clearly show that the port always contributed to government. It wasn't being subsidized. And therefore, it was permitted under the rules of WTO. Okay.
All righty. I have another comment that I want to read to you. It says, let's be real. Let's be real. What multinational conglomerate is going to push millions into a loss-making venture to make sure the community feels good? How many of you are pouring money into a loss-making business? How about we make the place interesting and stop focusing so much on selling rum and get those flights up so the airport can be profitable? Or was it the former owner's job to also build the tourist attractions and intrigue to make people want to fly in? How do you respond to that?
Now, let me, yes, the Port Authority is the one that is responsible for attracting and generating business in the port area. The port was also responsible for running the airport under the Hawksbill Creek Agreement. They have been allowed by government to shirk their duty. And so that is the problem. But if we were to encourage, and let's come back to this airlift and wanting to come to the country. And by the way, a lot of these businesses are not necessarily money losers. You wouldn't have a Borco and a Buckeye here for 60 odd years if it was losing money, or a Bahama Rock. And you've got a shipyard here. They've got a number of industries that support the shipyard and other industries that need things prefabricated. You've got Stat Oil, which, although not in the port area, is also requires and uses local people for various pieces of equipment or pipes that need to be made in a special way. And there's somebody that does that here. So the more you get of that, the more employment you're going to create. And usually that is a type of employment that generates more income for the average employee. And I should say this about Buckeye, the shipyard, polymers, Pharmachem. When the hurricanes hit, they were very quick in providing, and a number of them were, number of staff. They knew the staff were out of power. They managed to ship in small generators, provided people with interest-free loans, gave everybody X amount of cash. I believe one of the companies was handing out $500 cash to each employee, plus a generator, plus some food, plus water, so they were doing everything they could to help assist their staff. In addition to that, because they were able to pick up the phone and get their businesses up and running very quickly, they were able to ensure that everybody was back at work as soon as possible so they could continue to earn the money they needed to help fix whatever it is that was damaged by the storms. A great example of up and running was the shipyard after Matthew. Within 4 days of Matthew hitting, a ship was in the dry dock. Everybody was working. Everybody had a job. And that, to me, the hotels are all shut down. And hotels you got to renovate and this, that, and the other. That takes time. But these industries, they get up and running as quickly as possible, and everybody gets their employment going, which again is why I say the industrial sector is what has kept us going. If we can improve and increase the amount of industry that we have here, those people, you will have executives coming in all the time. You'll have business people coming in. They will decide to bring their families to vacation here, and other people start to about second homes again. And let me come back to the second home owner. He's probably spending $30,000 to $50,000 a year that just goes straight into the economy. That's money he brings from abroad and is spent here. So you have a couple hundred of those, and you're beginning to put some serious money into the economy, which creates employment. If I've got 200 or 300 extra people who are needing food at the food store, that's going to create. You've got to ship the stuff in. You've got to maintain the equipment at the food store. That's what generates business. But you've got to provide those businesses with the certainty for them to feel that they can come here. They will work out a way. Many of them, to see if their business would work. We have a tremendous amount of sun. Everybody is now talking about solar energy. There are a number of businesses, no doubt, that could actually come here, have solar all over their roof, and be able to produce and do it economically and feasibly. And as I said, under the WTO, there are a number of countries that have quotas. So it may be a particular item that they're being supplied by one country, and now that country can't give them any more because there's a quota. But if you were to do it in the Bahamas and have 60% manufacturing work done on it in the Bahamas, it could then be shipped to that same country that wants more of it in any event. So the Bahamians would then benefit by virtue of that industry being here.
All right. We're going to continue talking about the roadmap to improving Grand Bahama. The topic today is profits and loss, the plight of Grand Bahama, and my guest is Carey Leonard. And when we come back on the other side of the break, what does that roadmap look like in specifics? There's so much to cover, but I know we're going to get to quite a bit of it. And so we're going to take this quick break so you can hear from our sponsors, and then we will continue with the show. This is GPS on Glory 93.9 FM. Stay with us.
Ocean blue is the best in seafood, hey, hey. Fresh out the water and affordable too, yeah. We got fish, conch, lobster, shrimp, everything you want. Ocean blue got it. Ocean blue, friendly and clean, best service you ever seen. Ocean blue is the best in seafood, yeah. Fresh out the water and affordable too, yeah. Ocean blue seafood, we are here for you. Ocean blue seafood, no one else will do. Ocean Blue Seafood, located on Burnett Road. Contact us at 393-2160.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 Hyperimmune Egg Powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
One of the things I love about the mailboat is their relationship with Bahamas Air. I can earn travel points on my international freight and redeem them when I fly.
For me, online shopping is easy, with mailboat to U.S. addresses and regular freight delivery to Nassau. Plus, I can always prepay customs and freight, and they always notify me when my package arrives.
Yeah, a lot of people think the mailboat is just for shipping, but they also offer a safe and secure storage facility at affordable rates, all in a central, convenient location.
We also offer passenger service into Freeport multiple times per week with a seating capacity of over 450 persons.
With family movies on large screens, one hot meal included, and on-board lounge for snacks and soft drinks.
We're the mailboat. We're bridging people, products, and places.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun. And by BMP Liquidators. High-quality furniture and home goods at very reasonable prices.
Welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. The show today is being called Profits and Loss, the Plight of Grand Bahama, and my guest is Carey Leonard. Our telephone line to call is 828-3543. 828-3543 is the number to call. The text line is 828-2543. 828-2543. I want to read a couple of comments from our Facebook viewers. Jamila says, we as Bahamians need to learn how to be owners in our economy and not just workers. And Christoph says, only problem with that is those of us that aspire to be owners are halted by visionless leaders that'll thwart any economic advancement by real Bahamians that doesn't benefit themselves and their associates. Remember, Bahamians were blocked from trading on the international market for years. I see Mr. Leonard is shaking his head in agreement, so let's let him chime in here. What are your thoughts on those comments?
Well, I agree. First of all, let's deal with Bahamian investors.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems is, and I'm a commercial lawyer, so I've been dealing with companies and everything all my life. And there's only one group that I go back to my early years as a lawyer that has really, and they set the example, and that is Sir Franklin Wilson. He put together the Sunshine Group of companies. He got a group of Bahamians together to do what they've done. I would have to credit him with probably making more Bahamians millionaires than probably anybody else. He didn't start with a mass of money. Everybody looks at him as today, but they don't see how hard he worked in the beginning. And sweat equity for sure. When they started, they borrowed money, they mortgaged their houses, gave personal guarantees in order to get everything up and running. I'm sure there were one or two wives who were not particularly happy to have the house mortgaged for the sake of some business that they thought was going to work. Now, he had a vision. He had a vision, and he stuck to that vision, but he got a group of people, Bismarck Coakley, the late Stanley Wilson, Julian Maynard, but they had to mortgage to get going. And he has stuck to that. And by doing that, they were able to buy bigger businesses. They all pulled together. He was extremely good at making sure that he kept his shareholders up to date. And also he was extremely good at making sure that his companies had good corporate governance. And by that, you are reporting to all your shareholders every quarter, letting them know what you're doing, where the money's going. Everything was laid out so that to eliminate any mistrust. He ran it just like he ran it like any other corporation anywhere else in the world. It wasn't run like a mom and pop situation. It was run very clearly and very carefully in accordance with their business plan. They would revise business plans if necessary, and money was always set aside for further investments. You didn't take everything out of it in one go. You realized that something could take 2 or 3 years before it was going to make any money, and you were probably going to take a loss for a while. But he is the best example, I think, of Bahamians coming together. And if anybody really wants to set up businesses as a group, they should go and see him, because he really understands how to make it work. And I think the evidence is very clear that he knows how to make it work. But he started with very, very little.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important that people realize that, we can do it if we decide. This is why I get so frustrated. Oh, this is my business. No, it's your idea. And perhaps if but you may not have the money. So although it's your idea, you've got to be prepared to say, okay, so-and-so is going to have 50% or 60% of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other thing is that you set up, and again, as a corporate lawyer, I can tell you, you can set it up so that you can have preferential shares that you can buy later on down the road. Mm-hmm. What made companies successful in other countries, back in the 20th century, was you had what they called merchant bankers. Now, the merchant banker would own 60 or 70% of your business to help you get it going, and they would be directors on your company, and they would be telling you what to do. But hopefully, because of their experience and their ability, they were able to make sure your business made money. They also allowed you to buy your shares back at the then rate where it was more expensive, yes. But the fact of the matter is you wouldn't have had anything in the first place if you hadn't had that money behind you. So you have to be prepared to give up something to make something.
Okay, so let's get back to the roadmap for Grand Bahama's recovery.
Education. Too often, the Bahamas, and I'm sure, Michelle, you've seen this over and over again, we advertise that we are a country with educated people. Come to invest in the Bahamas. We have an educated workforce. So they come to the Bahamas.
And we love to tout our literacy rate, but what people need to understand is to be considered literal, all you have to do is be able to sign your name.
Well,
your name.
Having done that, we say, come here, and the people come here. And then the very next thing we say, oh, well, you're bringing this person, train a Bahamian. Well, wait a minute. Are you educated or are you not? Now, make up, it's one or the other. And also, these industries are not in the business of educating people. They're in the business. When you go to the States, they don't say, well, train a U.S. citizen, or Canada, train a Canadian.
Nope.
So our whole approach to this, I think, these days anyway, is wrong. And I'll briefly go off on education. Cayman regularize their immigration, so they know who's a citizen, who's a resident, and everything else. We have a lot of talk about, oh, well, we shouldn't allow this group in or that group in. They're already in our economy. Oh, well, they're getting this free and that free. That's because we're allowing that to happen. But in Cayman, if you are a Caymanian, you kids get to go to public school free. If you're a resident or on a work permit, you pay, I think in the junior group, it's $800 a term. By the time you hit the senior school, you're paying about $1,800 a term. And the point is, you bring the child there and you say it's a public school, and they're saying, well, $800, please. Oh, I don't have the money. Hold on a second here. You're either a resident or on a work permit. You must be able to pay. If not, maybe you shouldn't be on the island anymore.
Exactly. Time to go back home.
And so their schools have an average size of 25 to a class with a maximum of 28, and we're running 45 to 50. Well, we need to get a grip on this. That's the first thing. Secondly, just so the audience doesn't think I'm an island boy. I grew up in the Berry Islands. My mummy taught me till I was 10. So, the schooling is really important, and we need to focus on that. So I just, I want to make that, to me, we can't move this country forward unless we also have a plan on how we're going to improve our education system.
We have a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Well, good morning, Michelle, and to your guest.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Education is key. And I'd like, after I finish, for you to tell me and educate me and all the Bahamians younger than I on the benefits. The benefits in Freeport that are allowed to the foreign corporations are also available for our citizens.
They are.
But we've never been taught. There's over 100 according to my cousin Ryan Pinder, minister who was involved in finance, there's over 100 businesses laughing all the way to the bank in Freeport today because there is no VAT. Am I correct?
That's not correct. There's no VAT on goods, but there is VAT on services. So, for example, if I do $10,000 worth of work, I have to send you a bill with an additional 12% on that. So your bill's $11,200.
If you brought in $20,000 worth of lumber to do that, you don't pay VAT on that lumber.
But wait a minute. Only that is for the purposes of whatever it is you're going to be doing in the port area. You can't just bring in the lumber and send it to Nassau.
No. I'm coming to live in Freeport.
Right.
I'm a contractor, and I'm going to be building wooden homes.
Okay.
In code. And I'm going to bring in $1 million worth of wood.
Fine.
I pay the VAT on the wood, but I pay it on the service.
You don't. That's right. You don't pay any VAT on the wood, but but your construction, the services of the construction, you'll pay VAT on.
Well, you're already ahead of that right there. Had I been told at 17 years old, would have had me living in the modern city of Freeport instead of the entire ghetto out island of New Providence. But that is only one part of it. I also don't pay duty if I'm bonded, correct?
That's correct.
I also get gasoline if I'm bonded. How much do I pay for gas in my work truck today?
Well, you would pay the bonded price. I don't know what it is right now, but you would pay the bonded price. I mean, although I have a license, I have a blue plated car, so I pay duty on the gas.
Sure. So I will pay, instead of $5, let's say $3 for gasoline, Michelle. You listening to everything I'm saying?
Yes.
Because this was never taught in L.W. Young or St. Andrews, just letting you know. We were all in New Providence, sir, taught to believe, oh, there's all these incentives for the foreigners and they're doing great. No, these apply to us as well. And we need to start, as you said, education, teaching our citizens how to embrace what Freeport offers. And it's insane. It's insane what that offers.
Well,
and we don't know how to embrace it. Listen, you don't have to be in that conundrum. You have $100 million worth of tax a year from developed property. And you should have tax support out of business if they didn't give you that hotel and airport.
Well, the port didn't own the hotel. Hutchison does. But I agree with you, quite frankly. I agree that because they're not doing anything right now, those companies should be paying real property tax. That's what I said. In the past, DevCo spent millions, tens of millions a year maintaining, marketing, creating jobs because people were building. And they that stopped 20 odd years ago. I've seen nothing done by Hutchison since. And quite frankly, if it's worth $20 million a year in real property tax, they ought to get the bill.
Listen, Hubert Alexander Ingram said to Hubert Minnis, use every tool in the toolbox when it comes to negotiating that hotel and that airport. And we did not do it. It was a joke what we've done over there. We've wasted so much in the Suvians VAT money and other monies that I'm sure we pay in taxes. We're not negotiating like bosses. We're negotiating like soup kitchen owners. And I don't want to disrespect them because they're smarter than how we're negotiating. And it's a joke what you're doing in Freeport. Freeport is and should be a tech modern city. Let me give you one example. Great. If I was to come over there from New Providence, right, as an entrepreneur, I need myself at least 50 to 100 acres of land to set up a solar farm. And I have all the funding, so it's not going to cost the port or the government a penny. Now, I want you to answer and listen to this. How do I go about doing it? Because you're going to educate me now because you've been over there. How do I go about doing it to set up a solar farm on the ground where it's hurricane resilient more than on a roof, which doesn't make sense? And I am going to set up 40-foot containers full of computers. I'm breaking this down to grassroots level. I don't want to complicate you, okay? And I'm going to start mining and storing data. I am going to, for lack of a better word, I'm going to start embracing Bitcoin and mining it, okay? and making carbon neutral crypto mining. Doesn't mean I'm using any of Freeport Power Company's expensive power.
So Graham, I need you to wrap it up because I have several
I
other
see the
people
time.
trying to get through.
Okay, really quick, how do I come over there and get the land? Who do I see, the government or the port? And how do you help me as an entrepreneur? You should start a business helping Bahamian, Nasuvian entrepreneurs get into Freeport market. Michelle, give him my number, please.
What you do is you'd have to see probably somebody in DevCo, because of the amount of land you're looking at, if not somebody in Freeport Commercial Industrial. And as long as you're not selling power, because at the moment, GB Power has an exclusive on that. That was to encourage them to make the investment. And again, folks, GB Power, all the power lines and everything has been put in at no cost to the public treasury. They provide the electricity here. I have an emergency generator because of hurricanes and things, but my son lives in Nassau, and within 2 years, he'd put on more hours on his generator than I put on since I'd installed the thing 15 years ago. So,
all right. We have another call on the line.
Okay.
Caller, welcome to GPS.
Yes, good morning to you, Michelle, Mr. Carey, Leonard, and the wider Bahama, Seattle and Johnson.
Good morning.
Oh, Seattle. No. Okay.
Yeah, just, I know we have a limited amount of time, so just let me go through a few points. Personally, I think the failure of Grand Bahama in my 20 years of being back home has been a combination of both the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Hutchison Whampoa, and the government of the Bahamas.
Yep.
Understanding the 21st century reality of where we actually live and the possibility where Grand Bahama is. Yep. Right now, we're talking about the digital economy, conceptual economy, knowledge economy, green economy, blue economy, orange economy, and now the aquamarine economy. These are all reality that can happen on Grand Bahama as a whole. But the problem is that we have individuals in the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the government of the Bahamas that feigns knowledge. And pretending that they know what these are by Googling exactly what it is. Grand Bahama is, the Bahamas is considered the most digitally prepared country in the world. Freeport, if treated as a country, would be number 2 in the world. And so when we start talking about smart homes, smart communities, smart cities, and smart islands, there's no other place in the world that's more prime for that than Grand Bahama.
I agree.
And so the problem is that we're not having conscientious, directed conversation of what Freeport is and by extension Grand Bahama and what the possibilities are. We continuously having the talking heads making noise. I've wanted to study the economy and studied hospitality agreement over the last 20 years also and understand the viability and its competitive nature compared to other economic zones around the world and what can be offered plus our geolocation. So I think Hutchison Whampoa is fully aware of the potential. I must agree with that. I must agree that Hutchison Whampoa has done nothing but rape the Bahamian people in its dealings in the harbor, the airport, as well as the hotel and other land holdings. So, but I think it's important, though, for those of us on Grand Bahama that understands it, this is an integral part. It is that we have where COVID has reset the world and created a perfect environment for us to be able to do this. Mr. Carey, I think you would agree with me that the Grand Bahama Port Authority, acting as simply a collection agency for the government, for themselves, that is a pass-through for government, is a failure where they should be an aggressive marketing agency that spurs development for which they would make their money from the expansion of that economy.
Right.
And so, but I think it's important now for those of us that understand this not to allow the noisemakers in the marketplace to actually define who we are and what our potential is. I think we've been asking them for too long to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves, but we must demand from them the policies, laws, and the programs and push them out of the way if they won't step out of the way. And I think it says that we have not made sufficient demand as developing a blueprint that includes the so-called different economic models, including industries and et cetera, and putting what laws we want for the environment, what laws we want for development, whatever, put. And then remember, we are two shares of votes in Freeport. The licensees are mostly Bahamians now, and the government represents the people. So I think once we understand that comprehension of the structure, what it is, and the potential, what it is, then I think this is the most opportune time for us to get Grand Bahama, to get the ghetto, and we call it New Providence, to have 100,000, 200,000 of them to move to Freeport or Grand Bahama as a whole, to partake of a better lifestyle, greater job opportunities, and at the same time, education for these industries that we talk about takes less than 6 months nowadays with the new digital environment. And so if we know where we want to go, then we can actually direct people in preparation by having them stand in the future, so when we get there, they will be prepared. So hopefully we can continue this conversation on your show, Michelle, as well as right here on Grand Bahama, and have a real conversation of what it is. I'm born digital. I live in the future. I have designed for 43 years of technology. I know what the 21st century is. I know what the potential of Grand Bahama is. And I think, with all honesty, and I'm saying this, we could make as much as 10,000 new millionaires in the next 10 to 15 years on Grand Bahama if properly executed, and that can be proven.
All right. Thank you so much for calling. Mr. Leonard, how do you respond to that?
I agree completely. And that's why I keep coming back to legislation, because you need to set out the roadmap, yes, but the legislation has to be there so that it doesn't get derailed. And he's talking 5 to 10 years. You can put timelines into a number of things for certain investments to be done, but you're going to have to, for example, as I mentioned, the various acts that are already in place right now are really stumbling blocks to all of this. And until we remove the Incentives Act, until we clarify the fact that we only have one environmental group to deal with rather than, that was a complete overreach by government. This does not surprise me. Although we are 1/6 of the population, they have over and over again. I met with somebody 20 years ago dealing with the PUC, and they were saying, well, we want to deal with Batelco. And I'm saying, no, well, actually, the Port Authority is the regulator for Batelco here. Well, that's not, the Act doesn't do it. It says the Bahamas. So after speaking to government, they sent the consultant to Grand Bahama, and he looked at me. He was a foreign guy. He says, oh, nobody ever mentioned this to me. He says, I didn't know anything about Grand Bahama. And so that is a huge problem when this comes up. And Grand Bahama does have the potential to help fund so many other, as C. Allen just was talking about, people becoming millionaires and stuff like that. It's not, the workers aren't, we who are working aren't getting everything duty free, and we are paying our taxes, our service charges, our duties and everything, VAT including, and even on our goods. And that money can go to the Treasury to help move other islands ahead as well. So, this is why it's so important that we get Grand Bahama moving.
We have one more final caller on the line. Caller, make it quick. We only have 2 minutes left in the show. Welcome to GPS.
Thank you for having me, Michelle, and also Mr. Leonard. To that last point you made about Freeport having a trickling positive effect for the other islands, I thoroughly agree. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth, actually. Only small point I had to add is the fact that legislation is never going to change unless the government changes. Both parties, we were starting to call both parties the orange party now, yellow and red.
Right, no difference.
The only way it's going to change is if these guys get out of there. There's a passing baton back and forth. Legislation will never change as long as both parties can have a grip on the movers and shakers of this country. It's not going to change.
All right, caller.
It's not going to change.
Let's let him respond because I got to give him a moment to wrap up.
Very briefly, the Bahamas signed up to the Economic Partnership Agreement in 2008. The net effect of that, and it's a sort of a WTO thing, but the net effect of that is one of the requirements was that the Bahamas digitalized. And if you look at a number of businesses now, they have been forced to go online. The hemorrhaging of money is going to slow down at those various places. So the net effect is that if you have a WTO, it forces the legislation to be the right way around. Unfortunately, so many businesses here have no idea what WTO is about, and they've resisted it rather than embracing it. Even though the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce in Nassau also said that if we join WTO, the economy would benefit and so would employment.
So, Mr. Leonard, I have to have you back. I think I'm going to try to get you and C. Allen and maybe one or two others from Grand Bahama on one show so we can all, talk about all of what we discussed in more detail in terms of how we can make all of these millionaires. Because trust me, people have started moving to Grand Bahama now. They figured they could be included in that group.
It can hold 100,000, 200,000 people without a problem. It's designed that way.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being
here. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
All right, guys. So tomorrow on GPS, it's a Wednesday, and we're going to be doing the final of the series of shows we've been doing with Dr. Richard Fleming, talking about a comprehensive look at the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's some stuff that's going to be revealed tomorrow. Tomorrow is all about empowerment. That is going to blow your mind. Do not miss tomorrow's show. Tell everybody they got to tune in. We going deep. Special thanks to Mr. Carey Leonard for appearing on the show today and all of you for being a part of it. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Thank you so much. We will see you right here, same time, same place tomorrow for another episode of GPS. Have a good afternoon, everyone.